Hey guys, this is Comic Uno, and today I'm doing Comic Uno's Best Comics of the Week, and this is the show where I review all the comics I read this week in one show. We go least favorite to best pick of the week and everything in between. And of course, at the end of the episode, we do the viewer's pick of the week, so there's a chance for one of your comments to be featured at the end of this video, so be sure to let me know your pick of the week. Now, jumping into this fat stack of comics this week. I have 17 books. This is a lot of comics for me. So number 17 for me is The Amazing Spider-Man issue 85. A story I'm just not as fascinated with Spider-Man. I just feel like it's going through the motions with Spider-Man lately, and even the biggest of villains hasn't really brought in any energy to this book. I thought, Dr. Octopus was such an interesting character, especially with this past with Superior Spider-Man, and not even that really shakes the surface here. And honestly, it just kind of is going through the motions, like I said. I like the artwork for this one. I thought the artwork was very solid, but just not really feeling the story. So overall, giving that 2.5 stars, and that is number 17. Moving on to number 16, which is Marauders, issue 27. And this, I believe, is the last issue of Jerry Dugan's run. And it just kind of goes off into the distance. It sails off into the distance, where I feel like they try to really fit a lot into this issue, which really made the character moments not really hit home as much as I feel like they were trying to, especially Emma. Emma's such an interesting character, and I think one of the better parts of this series was Kitty and Emma's relationship with each other. I think that was really the glue of this book. And seeing Emma go, I think they tried to make it emotional, but it just didn't hit home for me. And then they really, really tried having too many characters in this issue. I thought the ending was interesting. So will Kitty kind of betray the X-Men? She's working with the Fantastic Four, and I thought that was an interesting tidbit to end and see where the reboot of Marauders ends up. But again, having Emma lead the story, I feel like that was something that was a big selling point for this series. So we'll see where it ends up going. There is a lot of artists on this issue as well, so that made this issue feel a bit inconsistent. So overall, giving this 2.5 stars, and that is number 16. Moving on to number 15, which is Stillwater, issue 12. And, my worry with the more ongoing indie titles is that it starts to meander a little bit. And I feel like that's what's been going on with Stillwater. There's definitely some exciting things happening. We get to see the town try to have a movement to take over and live their lives and kind of leave Stillwater. And obviously the people in power, the unexpected people in power, don't want to see that happen. So really it's a bigger action issue. It's moving the pawns into place, but like I said, it's kind of meandering a little bit now. We're like, okay, where is this series really going? And that's kind of what I felt with this issue. There's some good artwork. I still enjoy the characters, but we'll see. Hopefully some exciting things happen soon. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 15. Moving on to number 14, which is, I'm sad to say this so low. It's Darkhawk issue 5. I really love this miniseries, and I still do love this miniseries. I just think, honestly, the falter here is that it is only a miniseries. I feel like it's kind of built as an ongoing. You felt like there was just certain parts that were just starting to move, and now in this issue they just quickly wrap everything up, and they have this ominous ending with, I guess, the old Darkhawk. I honestly didn't really know what that ending was about. Besides this series, I really don't know much about Darkhawk, so I was like, oh, maybe that's for like bigger fans of Darkhawk. They'll understand that ending. But I just felt like there's so much more to this series, and they leave a lot to the imagination in this issue, and I wanted a little bit more. It felt like a final part to an arc, and not really a final part to a full story. So overall, I'm going to give this 3 stars. Still a great series. Still really like this character, and I do hope we get to see more of the character. Honestly, that was my big critique, is like, I actually want to see more than this. So, like I said, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 15. I'm sorry, that was number 14. Moving on to number 13, which is The Joker, issue 11. And supposedly DC only released Batman books this week. I think there's one non-Batman book that came out, and that was the Justice League title. But The Joker is out, and it's a slow burn, this series, which in some respects I really like, and in others, like this issue, it's a very point A to point B storyline where Barbara, which I really love the Barbara and Jim dynamic, where she's like, you're staying in, you're hurt, I'm going to have Cassandra watch you, and I'm going to kind of take this mission on. And I really like the dialogue where Jim says, Barbara thinks this is a superhero story. It's really a horror story. And that's something I think that has been so different about the Joker, and why I've enjoyed the Joker overall, is that it is a horror story. It's not really a superhero story. It honestly leans more towards a detective story. And that's why Jim Gordon as a protagonist is so great. The reason this is a little lower, the artwork for me is always... it's not really my style. Sometimes it really works for the book when it's really delving into that horror visuals, but because this is just a Talking Heads, I feel like it was a little stilted here. And the Joker stuff, honestly, was the stuff I was least interested in. I was more interested in the family dynamic here. So the beginning and then the curtain call of this issue, I didn't love as much. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 13. Moving on to number 12. And number 12 for me is Mighty Morphin, issue 15. And, we're definitely delving into more of the mythology aspect. The side I really enjoyed of this issue is Zordon and Zed's interaction. Their verse match obviously was building up from these flashbacks to the present, and I thought that was the strongest part of this issue and the heart of this issue. I do feel like a lot was happening in this, and that tends to happen with events and more action-driven issues. There's just a lot on the page, so it's kind of hard to follow some of the beats in this issue, but when the big moments shine, they do shine here, and the artwork, for as much that was going on in the page, really does shine, and there's some really good action in this issue. But overall, giving this 3 stars, I don't think there was a big standout moment from this issue, because it really is just building the blocks to some bigger mythology beats here. But overall, still a fun issue, and still enjoying this event. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 12, I believe. That was number 12. So moving on to number 11, which is Dark Ages issue 4, and this is the last Tom Taylor Marvel book I think we're going to be seeing for a while now that he's exclusive to DC. And I hate to compare Dark Knights of Steel to Dark Ages, but I guess I'm comparing it. There's just something about Dark Ages that feels like there's a real world building. The characters really feel like every single scene feels like it's playing a bigger part to an overall plot. And here I feel like there's just fun moments with characters, and oh yeah, there's this other thing going on with the villains. And I just feel like some of it could be a bit more cohesive. Maybe it's the art style that makes it a little less cohesive, but I like a lot of the character moments. I love seeing Pepper Pot in an Iron Man suit. I really liked seeing the Gabby and Laura working together. I love the Spider-Man moments in this issue, and I think those are written really well, and there's some really cool Elseworld things happening here, things that we can't normally see in the regular universe. Again, the Parker family, some of these characters a bit older, some of them having kids. That's a cool aspect to the story, but I'm not as driven to the main plot here, which there is some main focus of that in this issue. So overall, giving that 3 stars, and that is number 11. Moving on to number 10, which is Daredevil, Woman Without Fear, issue 1. If you watched my most anticipated books for 2022, you will know I was very much looking forward to this book, and I thought this was just an okay premiere. I think it let me down a little bit. I don't think it was as strong as what we've been seeing from Elektra in the regular Daredevil series, and it felt like a lot of it was just flashbacks. A lot of it was just telling us what has happened to Elektra, and there wasn't a lot of present storyline going on. It was just a lot of thinking in this issue, which is, necessarily not a bad thing, but visually it just wasn't as interesting to watch. And, I'm not a hardcore Elektra fan, so I don't know everything about Elektra, so it was nice to learn things here and there about her, but there's other things where you're like, oh, I kind of already know that about the character. I know they were trying to kind of hit some more emotions here, but because it's so driven literally by other people, I don't really know if the emotions hit home here. And I don't think the artwork was as strong as what we were seeing in the Daredevil main series as well. I don't think this was a bad issue by any means, and I think it was a pretty solid premiere, but I was just expecting a lot more from this issue. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 11. Moving on to number 9, which is Batgirls issue 2, a book that, I'm having fun with. It's not exactly what I've expected from a Stephanie Brown Cassandra book, but the moments that are slice of life, I think, really shine here. When it's just Barbara, Oracle, and Steph interacting with each other, I just love their dynamic, and I think that's something that will continue to make me want to read this book. The Peacemaker stuff and the things connected to more of the future state things, I don't even like that in the regular Batman series, so to see that be kind of the main superhero thread is not as interesting to me. Also, the artwork is something you have to get used to. It's a lot grittier for the cartoony version they're going for this book, but overall I'm having a lot of fun with these characters. I love Stephanie to death. I love Cassandra. I love Barbara. I love Batgirl, so it's just fun to have this monthly again, and definitely a different vibe and a different flavor. It's nice to see a different tone of a book as well, and really hear the voice of a creative team. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. Moving on to number 8, which is Spider-Woman, issue 18, which I was pleasantly surprised by. Not because it's Spider-Woman, because I love this series, but because it's a tie-in to Devil's Reign. I feel like a lot of times that those are hit and misses with tie-ins, where a book that's been ongoing and you're like, well, how's this gonna tie in? It has to stop their story to tell the main event, but I also think it's important to have events tie into main titles, because it seems like that main event actually shaking things up. So I thought there was a lot of good emotion here. It's Jessica versus Jessica by the end. There's some interesting girl things, I guess we could say, by the end. There's some really good artwork emotionally, because there's just such a good emotional beat and thread throughout this whole issue, especially after Jessica's friend gets hurt, and even her getting hurt, so you get a lot of anguish in this issue. Overall, I had a good time with it. I'm not a huge fan that it had to tie into Devil's Reign in this case, but I think it did as well as it could with tying into a main event and still trying to stay true to the story that they were telling. So overall, giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Fantastic Four, issue 39. And this arc has been interesting. I like seeing the idea that maybe the Fantastic Four aren't great parents, and literally going into the court of law to figure out if they are. And there's some really good stories here, especially Ben's son. I really liked that moment, and I think one of the beating hearts of this run has been Ben becoming a dad, and that's aspect I've really enjoyed about this series, and that's really shines here. But then we get some moments with Val, and some good twist about the Wizard. We get to see maybe another son roaming around. We also get to see Bentley 23 become the Wizard. What is that going to mean? Is he going to become more of a villain? So I really like that ending, and it plays a bigger role in the Fantastic Four, where this could have easily just been a filler arc. The thing I thought was weird about this issue was Johnny's reaction to it all. Like, there's a moment where he's so selfish, and he's just like, well, I don't care what's going on with your kids. I'm dealing with something. I'm gonna go and figure it out. And that was just so out of character for Johnny. He wouldn't do that. That's his family, and he cares about those children. So I just thought that was really weird. Hopefully that is explained in future issues. There are moments in this issue that feel a little crowded as well. There's a lot of dialogue in the issue, but overall, like I said, there's a lot of fun moments in this, and a lot of good emotional beats. So giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Moving on to number 6, which is Miss Marvel, Beyond the Limit, issue 2. And, I feel like I hate using this word, but I'm going to use it for the sake. It feels like a filler arc, and I don't love that feeling for a miniseries, because we have such limited time with Miss Marvel. You really want to get to see some progression. But for a filler arc, I feel like they did a really good job at making it fun. You get this Bollywood aspect, you gets stuff going on with Miss Marvel's powers, which is probably the part I like the least about this story, but I love the friends. I love Zoe, I love Nakia, I love Bruno, and them being heavily involved in this issue made me enjoy this issue even more than issue 1, and I feel like the artwork is even better than issue 1, and I love this artist. It's the same artist that has done Runaways for a really long time, so I've already enjoyed their work, and seeing it evolve even more in this issue I thought was great, because facial expressions are nailed here, and there's just some good moments between friends and them being heroes as well, which is something I love seeing from them as well. So pretty good character story, I would say. I really like this as a character story. As a plot-driven story, I think there could be a couple more dimensions here and a couple more layers to explore, but it's been a pretty okay miniseries thus far. So overall, I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is my number 6 pick. Moving on to number 5, which is Batman Urban Legends, issue 11. And honestly, I picked this up mostly for the Zatanna and Batman story. Also, I've been picking up Batman Urban Legends, but there's always one story where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm picking up for Tim, or I'm picking it up for Steph, I'm picking it up for Zatanna. And I really enjoyed the Zatanna story. They left you off on a mystery. You're like, well, what adventure are they going through? And they don't really answer all your questions here, because it is a 6-part story, and I like that, because it gives you a reason to want to pick up the next issue. The other 2 stories, I wasn't as involved in those characters, but I like that they both were magical characters in some regards, so it's like, okay, it made sense that they were in this issue. And then you have the Bat Hound story, which I really like the art, and the story is pretty good too. I mean, it's Bat Hound, so I don't know if I necessarily needed the story, but to have a short story in something like Batman Urban Legends with Bat Hound, I think it's the perfect place to have it. So I think the collection of stories was really good, but me personally, I just really like the Batman Zatanna story. So I'm giving that 3.5 stars, and that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, issue 3. And honestly, I thought this is the best issue thus far, because you get this good emotional beat between sisters. So between Susan and Kate, where Kate understands and learns a new layer about her own sister and their past, and Kate kind of redefines their relationship in this issue as they're trying to deal with the circus stuff, and Kate is texting her friends, and there's some good moments between there, although I just don't know why we can't see them. I would like to see, America Chavez and Cassie and Clint. I don't know why they can't be involved in these issues instead of the texting idea, but it is still good to get their voices, and I like the sister dynamic and always learning about Kate's family. That's something I love about her ongoing books, is that there's always a new layer to learn about the Bishop family. You never uncover everything. And this time we're seeing it from the point of view of the sister, who honestly hasn't had much panel time since her first appearance. She really hasn't been a character up to this point, so it's cool to see her become a character. The artwork, I think, is pretty solid overall. There are times where it feels a little sketchy, but I think it works for this type of title. And you do get to see some motifs back to Kelly Thompson's run, which was cool to see visually. So yeah, Hawkeye, Kate Bishop gets 4 stars, and that's number 4. Moving on to number 3, which is Mazebook, issue 5. This is the last issue of this book, and honestly, it doesn't disappoint. It's really a story about grief, and there's no magical answer to the ending here. It wasn't like, okay, the daughter's actually alive. Great, let's end the story. It really is a story about grief, and it was a story about letting go. It was a story of being like, okay, it's okay to forget, but have those special memories still, but not consume your whole life with them. And then it's him moving on, but still loving his daughter. And I thought it was a really beautiful story. And if you haven't been reading this miniseries, I think from beginning to middle to the end, it's a really consistent book, and very much recommend it. So go check it out. And I gave that 4 stars. So it's number 3. Moving on to number 2, speaking of Jeff Lemire, it is Robin and Batman, issue 3. Another book that ended this week for Jeff Lemire, a miniseries. And this is a story about father and son. It really is a story about Batman and Robin figuring out who he is. There's some really good moments between Alfred and Dick, especially in this issue. But then there's also this really fun moment about him not knowing how to be a kid. That the set of friends invite him to a D&D hangout, and he says no. And then once he saves Batman and kind of figures out that he can be the light of Batman, and what his partnership means, and really what his father-son dynamic means that's when he can have friends and join the Teen Titans and go to the D&D events. And I thought that was really good. And I just enjoyed Jeff Lemire's voice. I keep saying this book doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it proves that not all books have to. It proves you could just tell a really good character story. And yes, this is a story that we know about with Dick Grayson, but the way it was told, it was a special character story. So overall, giving that 4 stars, and that is number 2. Moving on to number 1, I was blown away by this book, and I actually picked this up on whim. It wasn't originally on my pull list, but Rain, issue 1. So the reason I got it was Joe Hill. I've enjoyed Joe Hill's books. It was a queer book, so I was like, oh, that's interesting as well. Let me give this a shot. And man, from like panel 1, I fell in love with this book. I love the main character's voice, where you get to see from her perspective how the world ends. And the world ends in a pretty crazy way here, where nails are falling from the sky. And it's really this love story about how she, in a story about grief as well, about how she lost the person that she loved, and the way that they build the connection between the two characters and how real it all feels was so beautifully done, and just the narration was so good for this book. But visually, this book was interesting, the pacing of this book was interesting, and when you get to that last page and you see, okay, this is a book about grief, you're like, man, I want to see more, because I don't even know what this book is going to be, and I was excited about that. It just was a textbook definition of a perfect first issue, and I just got totally sucked in, and I'm like, I'm ready for issue 1. I love this character, I love her voice, let's go check out more. And the artwork is so good and grim and works for this horror book, but it also is somewhat, I don't want to say bright, but it's not dark. The colors are not dark in this book, and I think that really works for this as well. So overall, I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book, very much recommend Rain, so go check that one out. So in the comments below, let me know what your pick of the week was for this week. And the viewers' pick of the week for last week was actually my pick of the week, Dark Knights of Steel issue 3. And here are some comments about that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. This is Comic Uno, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.